Let me turn this over to Dr. Crittenden. What does this cost? You're going to start paying for this? In terms of step therapy, where does this fit? How do you go about this? It's a new drug.
Yeah, no, I think that's a question. So as a nephrologist, I'm also excited about this drug. But most health plans start the evaluation process for pipeline drugs way in advance of NDAs and PDUFA dates. I mean, we've known about these drugs in the pipeline for a while. The drug evaluation process is very dynamic and rigorous. But before I talk about that exact process, I'd like to just spend a couple seconds talking about how we think about drug utilization. And so the main purpose of a pharmacy utilization program is to mainly help us ensure that our patients and members are using the right drug at the right time. That is correct timing, correct dosing, correct route of administration, correct site of administration. So is this home, is this oral, is this office, is this infusion suite, et cetera. And ultimately you want to make sure that patients are getting clinically proven based on evidence, nice, large randomized controlled trials, medications that are going to work for their condition. So the three most common kind of utilization management strategies or tactics that you'll see from almost all payers, this includes Medicare, Medicaid, commercial type plans, are things like prior authorizations, step therapy, and quantity limits. So prior authorization is sometimes seen as the bane of a physician's existence, but really all we're doing is asking for a pre-approval for certain medications before they're covered. And what that does is that helps us understand how the patient's going to get the drug and if it's going to be used safely and effective. And this in turn helps reduce things like inappropriate utilization. So for example, in anemia of CKD, this prior authorization process will help us drive to ensure that clinical best practices and standards are adhered to. That is, for example, we mentioned this earlier, that that we're not giving ESAs if the hemoglobin is above 10 or something like this. Step therapy is another lever that plans will use to help with medication therapy management. And again, the whole point of this is that you'll have a patient step through, or a member step through an initial drug before non-preferred or non-covered drug is covered. The preferred drug that you're stepping through is usually either of the same class or same mechanism of action, or is generic, not always, but often is generic. But it's also seen as a widely safe, effective, kind of evidence-based standard of practice. So for example, in the anemia realm, a lot of health plans may have preferred Retacrit, which is EPO alpha biosimilar, and you'll step through that before using the other Epogen brands. And then the final kind of tactic would be, or lever would be quantity limits. And quantity limits are just that. You don't want to have patients out there with 3 months supply of a drug that either could be potentially dangerous, that doesn't preserve or store properly. Also, patients can inadvertently give higher doses. So you want to quantity limit patients so that you're ensuring that the drug is appropriately used and stable. So to get back to kind of how we'll think about this new class of drugs, like I said, I'm very excited about this possibility. And again, most plans have already looked at these drugs on the pipeline for quite some time. But we'll review lots of data points. So for example, all these trials that both Dan and Bob mentioned, reviewing all the relevant clinical literature. Health plans also love like health outcomes or pharmacoeconomic studies to help us understand kind of total cost of care. We'll also consider what the current toolbox is. So how is the new therapy going to help change management? Will it increase a safety profile, or will it make it so that patients are now getting drugs in less advanced care or settings? So for example, will this take a patient out of the hospital with infusion suite and keep them in home? And then finally, we look at things like, will it actually drop the rate of red blood cell transfusions? Will it lower IV iron infusions? Because we know IV iron has its own set of challenges in terms of site of delivery and even adverse reactions. And then again, with this new class of drugs, the signals in the literature that are showing slowing to kidney progression are super important to know, because we know that if you slow the kidney progression, one less month on dialysis is much better for in terms of patient quality care and then total cost of care. And then finally, we always want to make sure that we're staying kind of in lockstep with typical standard of care, healthcare community medical practice. And I can't say this enough. The health plan's job is to make sure that we're practicing, or our physician partners and community, we're really practicing contemporary evidence-based medicine that is standard of care.
I mean, whenever I see stat on a drug name, I see dollar signs. They're new. There's a lot of money invested in them to bring them to market. They're expensive, at least at first. So what kind of data are you looking for to justify them financially?
Good question. Again, it comes down to cost, right? And a lot of times you'll see drug companies soon after their NDA is released, they'll start some pharmacoeconomic studies to help understand total cost of care. So they will perhaps tag their drug to say reduction of hospitalization or something like that, so that the plan will understand the total collective value.